Hi everyone and welcome again to Your Story, my inspiration podcast. This is Rosine, your host. Today is so special because I have a special guest. I'm gonna let her introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Lilian. I came from China 5 years ago and I'm Chinese. And thanks for Rosine inviting me here to have a great conversation.
I'm glad, and I'm sure we're gonna share some good stuff here because this is why this podcast exists, to lift up each other, to help each other, because we all come in this country to start from scratch, to start from zero. So sharing all these experiences is gonna help us to help somebody else. So let's start by, do you come by yourself or do you have a family around?
So I came by myself. I came here 5 years ago in 2019 for my graduate school in Pittsburgh. And after my grad school, I stayed here for a job. And now I moved to Arizona, and that's where I met Rosine. And I work for a university here as a researcher.
Welcome to the club of people who came by themselves and had to figure out everything. But I'm glad that we are here and we're doing great. So let's talk about your grad school. You mentioned that you went to school. How was that? Like you came from China and you went straight to grad school. A system that is different from your system back home. How was it?
It was really challenging. So my graduate school experience was, in one word, very intense, that I had to work 50, even 60, even 70 hours per week just for the coursework. And let alone in the last semester, you are supposed to find a job. So it's finishing your schoolwork plus finding a job, plus you have to think about the visa situation, since there is a clock always ticking behind you for the visa. So it's pretty challenging.
I agree with you because myself went to school here, grad school, and let me tell you something. The first thing that I noticed was like I have to work double, as you're saying. Like if somebody takes like only an hour to read a chapter or a paragraph, that meant for Rosine like 3 hours maybe, like making sure that I understand everything and instruction. So I can relate to your story. And regarding like social life, the culture in school, how was it? Like, did you feel like it's the same back home, or it was a...
It's also very different. So the one, as you mentioned in the previous episode, that the language, previously in China, I was speaking Chinese 24/7 for all my coursework, for all my communication with friends, family. But all of a sudden, when I arrived in America, everything switched to English. It's just as if your iPhone all of a sudden switched from your native language to English, and you have to adapt to everything from scratch. And that is language-wise, is for sure challenging. And even for me, when I was in China, I feel pretty confident about my English speaking skills. But in the beginning of arriving here, it's just mentally very challenging to speak to a native speaker and just try not to make mistakes. And there are so many going on the back of your mind. So sometimes your brain just stopped on the language processing part.
I agree with you because this is really a very challenging thing when you have to converse, like have a dialogue with somebody. For them it's their native language, and it's okay because they don't have to process. And I probably mentioned in a previous episode about how we have to go through the whole process of translating other languages, and you feel like you're stuttering when you're trying to get a word out there, and it can be disturbing, but I call it magic because not everybody has that power of having different languages. So I call it like magic. Like we have a magic power to go through all that process and still survive to navigate the system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I definitely feel it gets better and better and better for language-wise, as long as you just keep on practicing and being in the English-speaking environment. And one day, magically, you will find out that, oh, it's actually not that difficult. And actually, it's kind of hard to switch back to Chinese sometimes for me, since I am speaking English 24/7 right now. So, yeah, so it will work out eventually.
Do you feel like sometimes when you try to speak your mother tongue or another language, like regarding my case, because I spoke French, which is fading out, unfortunately, because I'm not using it. I speak my mother tongue and English. So those are three languages in this machine. So the process is longer than that. But then when I spend, like, it's been 5 years-ish right now, when I try to speak, sometimes, let's say when I want to speak in French, English, like, hey, I'm here too. Like,
English pops out.
Yeah, mixing up like some language. Yeah. It hasn't yet happened in Kinyarwanda, but sometimes my sisters tell me, like, are you sure that's Kinyarwanda? Like, because I'm translating then from English to Kinyarwanda, and that's weird. Does it happen to you, like in your native language, like you mixing Chinese with?
It happens all the time. It's like, it's very embarrassing also that when I talk to my mom and my dad, they don't speak English at all. And then the English words, they just come up constantly. And sometimes I will say, okay, yes, no, in my Chinese to my parents, which makes them confused. But also I should practice French with you, because I'm learning French right now, and it is hard if you have like multiple language in your head and try to pick and choose which one to speak. Sometimes it's confusing.
Yeah, I would be glad to help you with some French, but I'm not the best right now because my nieces are greeting me these days. And do you think that you still speak French? I'm like, I'm trying here. So moving on, that was like, in school, like education-wise, and I'm glad that you got your degree,
Thank you.
Yeah, because that is the hard part. Like, I can tell you, I had to work so hard. Like, I was working night shift and I had to go to school like same time. Like, it wasn't easy. But I'm glad that we are here talking about this and looking behind me like, yeah, we made it happen and we are here. So what do you do for work?
So I am currently a researcher at Arizona State University, and I work on student data. I work on learning analytics, which is a special type of data analysis to help students learn better.
Can you give me a high five here? Thank you. This is who we are. We work hard and we get to things, and that's goal setting and achieving them goals. So I'm glad that you working in job that you like. Is that your dream job?
Yeah, I really much want to devote my time in education, because I think education is one of the most important ways to help students and help others to achieve what they want to achieve and live a life they want to live. This happened to me, that I came from a rural area in China. Both my parents, my grandparents, they were peasants. They were really working hard in the field, growing crops. But now I am here. I am in another country. I am working very hard to be able to help others. So
that's great.
That is the part that I'm really happy that I'm here.
I'm glad that you are able to help others and also help yourself, because you are working your way up there, and that's what we do here. You can listen to this if you just moved here to USA. You can work up, your way up there, and it's possible, it's doable. So regarding challenges, like we talked about language barrier, we talked about in school that we had to work really hard. What else, and how did you handle some of your challenges? Please share some tips.
So there's another big one, which is cultural challenge. So I came from an Eastern culture. China is very, very much different culture-wise compared to America, especially in day-to-day communication. That in China we don't do so-called small talk, because on the street there are millions of people, so we don't normally greet with each other. So that is actually very interesting, because I heard your story that it is normal for you to greet all the people in a room when you enter a room. But in China, it's really unusual. So we just do our own business. So the first culture shock I came here is that, actually people were saying hi to me on the street. And based on the background that I was in a relatively small city, Pittsburgh. But later on, I realized that yes, a lot of people will smile to you and they will say hi to you. They will ask, how's it going? How are you doing? But to the core, it's just a way of greeting each other. It's a way to open a conversation. And they're not actually asking you, how are you doing, really? Yeah. So I cannot say that, actually I'm feeling really bad. I encounter a lot of sad things today. But instead I have to say, good, how are you?
It's really superficial, that's how I would say that. And like the smile you're saying, I probably call it like plastic smile. Like I'm used to that culture where people smile because they feel it, like they have that time. Hi, how are you doing? It's just a smile that from deep, like bottom of your heart. But here somebody would just like a second. It's culture. I wouldn't judge anything, but I found myself just smiling for so many seconds while somebody's like was gone like long time ago, and the smile is no longer there. So it's culture difference, it's culture shock that we have to go through. But yeah, that's why we are here and we are learning, and sometimes it requires open mind to see others, how they handle things. So is there anything else you would like to share right now, like how to probably handle those kind of situations? If somebody just moved here and they are so overwhelmed and they feel like they can't do it here, they can't make a living here, what would be your advice to them?
I think for me, it's very important to build up the friend circle, meaning that you can find someone who really will listen to your troubles, who really will respond to your, really asking you how you really are doing, and are willing to listen to your bad experience and trying to find a solution. So I think the very first big step for me to embrace this culture is try to build a friend circle that have similar minds, that you can truly share and feel comfortable, feel safe to be in, especially as a newcomer. I have no family members here, so friends are really truly a great support for me.
I'm gonna have you elaborate a little bit. Like, let's say this is the reason I just came here. I don't know anybody. Where am I gonna, like, from the street? Can you be my friend? Like, how did you do that? Like, explore a little bit more.
Yeah, that is actually a very great question, because now we have technology, we have mobile apps, and there's one great app that is called Meetup that I highly recommend. If you're new to America, you should download that app and browse through. There are so many different interest groups, and they organize different events, for example, hiking or board games, and just take the chance to join those events that you're interested in, and I assure you that you will find someone with similar minds and you can open up and be friends with.
Well, we are getting to the best part. Listen, okay, you're gonna have to tell me honestly. Okay. So, what was your most like weird moment? We all have funny moments, like when we are new here. I probably shared mine in previous episode, including getting lost in New York, blah, blah, blah. What was your moment, like, when you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, Lilian?
I have a lot of embarrassing moments. Let me pick and choose which one I feel most embarrassed about. Probably is that I think it's the very first class I've ever been to, and the instructor actually assigned a task a day prior that we need to make one slide of the presentation to introduce ourselves, introduce our names, and I completely forgot about this task. And that was the first class I've ever been in, the United States. So other people, they all had their slides, beautiful slides, and I had nothing. So I have to improvise.
That's smart.
Yeah. And I was pretty embarrassed because I was the only one in the class without a slide. But later on, I just laugh about it, and I think maybe that makes other people remember me, actually, remember my name.
Oh my gosh. Let me
I
tell
don't
you
have
something.
a slide.
Sorry to interrupt. Let me tell you something. Those are embarrassing moments that we learn from to go further. That's why we have those moments, because when I go back to all things that I went through, that would say, yeah, that was embarrassing. I went home and sit down and said, what just happened to Rosine? How can I avoid that in the future? So it helps to learn more and to find solutions in the future, so you don't have to make the same mistakes. So
Exactly.
yeah.
And I also want to add on to that is that it all relates to the school experience here, that you're expected to be self-motivated, you're expected to check all the messages left by your instructors and do your work before the class. Then you participate in the class with your self-agency and full participation. So that is what expected in here.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is something that happened to me. I didn't even have the school email the first time I entered the class. So
Really?
they were saying, hey, go in your email and find this and that. And then I was like, so what am I gonna do? Like, what is the email? I was checking my personal email, my Gmail. I was like, what is he talking about? They were like, don't you have school email? Somebody told me that I needed that. The whole point of this podcast is that, we are diverse. Like, you come from China, I come from Africa, somebody's come from Europe, but we all go through same challenges pretty much, because this is a learning experience. That's why we want to help each other, to learn from each other and lift up each other. So before I wrap up this episode, I would like to say that if you just came, maybe you moved like yesterday, or you've been around here and you feel like overwhelmed, it's okay, because it's a process, and that's why we help each other. That's why we talk about it, so we can share our stories. And yeah, it's a long journey, but it's doable.
Yeah, and sometimes you just have to be patient, and with time it really improves day by day. You will get more used to the culture, you will find your friend group, you will overcome the challenge on your grad school work or any kind of work. And I hope it helps you, the video helps you well.
I love that. Thank you so much, Lilian, for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.